He wanted to understand, if there is all this gold in the belly of Burkina Faso, why are the bellies of the Burkinabè people empty? He needed an answer to that question. If there's so much gold right here in Burkina Faso, why is our GDP per capita less than $500? My name is DJ Bokali, and Africa is my superpower. Africa should be your superpower too. Now, the young Ibrahim grew up in Bobo Dioulasso. This is the second largest city in Burkina Faso. And growing up in the 90s, this was a time when Blaise Compaoré was lording it over the nation, was stealing from the people, was colluding with fellow corrupt ruling elite across Francophone Africa and in France itself. This was the time Ibrahim Traoré was growing up in Bobo Dioulasso. And he was just an ordinary kid who liked football. He still likes football a lot. Growing up, watching his father working every day, his mama taking care of them in this second largest city. Again, let that remind you that this was just an ordinary life. He then proceeded to high school. He performed so well. But I want at this point to explain to you something that was happening in his heart and in his mind. He got to learn that his country of Burkina Faso had so much gold. So much gold. Burkina Faso is one of Africa's leading gold producers. It's one of the leading gold producers on this continent. And then in high school, he started asking himself, but why is there so much poverty if we have all this gold? It's a question you should ask yourself too. Why is there so much poverty in Africa yet we have all these minerals? If you look at your country and look at the minerals that you possess, South Africa with all its gold, Ghana with all its gold, why is there so much poverty, yet we have a lot of gold? He asked himself that question. He posed that question to himself in high school. And deep, quiet guy that he is, he thought a lot about that. And he decided that he was going to use his university education to dig deeper for an answer to that question. And so he chose to study geology. When he joined the University of Ouagadougou and finally moved to the capital, he chose to study geology because geology is about studying the earth, what lies beneath the soil that we walk on. He wanted to understand, if there is all this gold in the belly of Burkina Faso, why are the bellies of the Burkinabè people empty? He needed an answer to that question. If there's so much gold right here in Burkina Faso, why is our GDP per capita less than $500? If we have all this gold, why is it that we continue being so poor? He decided that he was going to study that at university. So for him, studying geology wasn't just about ticking a box that I'm at uni and I've got to study something. It was about understanding his country's mineral resources, most of the gold, and why these resources were not working for the people. Now, as much as he was understanding the extent of Burkina Faso's gold and Burkina Faso's mineral resources, he wasn't getting some answers because the geology professors couldn't give him those answers. The books that he was reading were not giving him those answers. The study groups that he belonged to in the University of Ouagadougou were not giving him those answers. Do you know which answers he was looking for? He wanted to understand why there were different classes in Burkina Faso and why at the very top of this pyramid were the corrupt ruling elite, people like the president, who are billionaires, yet more than 90% of the country were poor. He didn't understand this class division. And now that he was in Ouagadougou, he was exposed to that glaring wealth, some of it amassed through corrupt means by the corrupt ruling elite, some of it amassed through hard-working Burkinabè people, but there were very few. He saw the different classes in Ouagadougou, the city. He saw these different classes and it bothered him. And he wanted answers as to why this was the case. Because he didn't find these answers from his professors, Ibrahim Traoré joined a Marxist student organization. He joined a Marxist student organization and he began having concerted discussions with his fellow students. Debates about Marxism, debates about capitalism, debates about Africa's place in these different ideologies. But the more he debated on that, the more he learned about Marxism. You understand that at its heart, Marxism is about a classless society. Marxism is about the laborers not just being mere footnotes in a capitalistic quest. It's about a classless society. It's about people living together without being exploited by the upper classes, by the richer ones. Ibrahim Traoré, however, wasn't focused on the ideological angle, the rigid ideological contours that the West would easily say that now he's a Marxist, now he's a communist. He has sold his soul to China. Ibrahim Traoré, at that time at the University of Ouagadougou, began to develop his worldview, his thoughts, his principles, and his beliefs. And to him, a classless society became about equality of opportunity and equality of reward. I'll repeat that. For him, away from the rigid contours of ideology, it was purely about equality of opportunity and equality of reward. Because when he looked around him, when he looked at the farmers back home in Kera village, they didn't find opportunity for their produce, to sell their produce, to add value to their produce. There was no equal reward for them. There was no equal opportunity for them. He saw hardworking people in the village who simply did not access equal reward. And at that time, something happened to him that I will tackle in the next segment. Thanks a lot for joining us today. Thanks a lot for being a part of this journey of the African awakening, for being part of this community and part of this movement. Remember, our goal, our Northern Star, is that Africa must awaken, unite, and transformation must ensue. We, the people of Africa, must awaken, unite, and transform this great motherland, this great place that we call Africa. Thank you very much. Whatever it is that you're now beginning to learn about Ibrahim Traoré, the ordinary person, please share in the comments what it is that you can relate to. Share in the comments about how you feel as somebody that society perceives as just an ordinary African. Are you beginning to access your African superpower? Are you beginning to believe that the African dream is more powerful than the American dream? Are you beginning to believe that indeed together we can transform Africa? And if not, please share why. What is holding you down? Share what is holding you down. Because this is a conversation, and together we must educate each other, empower each other as we continue to transform Africa. Now, I want to tell you what it is that happened to Ibrahim Traoré right there at the University of Ouagadougou that completely changed him. Something happened to Ibrahim Traoré. Remember, he had sought for answers in geology. He found some answers, but not all of them. He then sought for some answers in Marxism. He found some answers, but not all of them. He got to understand the promise of a society that doesn't have class divisions. He got to understand that indeed it is possible to have a society where everybody is equal. Nobody is more equal than any other person. He got to understand that promise, that potential, that promise and potential of equality of opportunity and equality of reward. But you know the answer that he didn't find, and that is what changed him. Even more, that is what accelerated his growth and his transformation into the person that he became, the person that you know today. When he asked himself the question, how can we realize this society? How can we get from this point of dreaming about a society where there's equality of opportunity and equality of reward to realizing that dream? How can we do that? He realized that he couldn't do that as a professor. Neither could he do that as a Marxism proponent or evangelist. he realized that he needed something more. And so he joined the army. As a young man in his mid-20s, he went to military academy. He joined the army and he gave it his all. Ibrahim Traoré did not just join the army to tick a box, the same way he didn't join university to tick a box. He joined the army because he had a mission to change his country, to transform his country, by being on the front lines of defending his country. And internally, something was happening more and more. That's the Ibrahim Traoré that was in the picture in 2014 when the people of Burkina Faso protested, demonstrated in the streets. The uprising of the people of Burkina Faso that toppled a dictator. The uprising of the people of Burkina Faso that toppled Blaise Compaoré. It found Ibrahim Traoré in that state of mind, defending his country in northern Burkina Faso as a loyal, committed soldier with a vision. He was not just a young man in a uniform, but he was a young man with a vision. That's a lesson that every African should pick. You shouldn't just be an African with a banker's career, with a nurse's uniform, with a policeman's uniform. You shouldn't just be an African doing what it is you are doing at this stage in your life, in your career. But more importantly, critically, for yourself and for Africa, you should be an African with a vision. 2014, Ibrahim Traoré was a 26-year-old African with a vision for a country that deserved better. And he decided to give it his all. As a soldier, he decided to give it his all. Now, if you want to know the power of vision and the superpower that lies within you, the African superpower within you, remember that between 2014, when he was a 26-year-old soldier in northern Burkina Faso, and 2022, when he became the youngest president in Africa, there were only 8 years. So ask yourself where you were 8 years ago before we continue. At this stage, we need to look at something that was happening in Ibrahim Traoré's mind. Something really powerful that should also happen in our minds, if it's not happening, that is. There's something I'm calling soldier intellectual. Soldier intellectual. This is a soldier who realizes that even more powerful than his gun, even more powerful than his Kalashnikov, even more powerful than that is his mind. A soldier who realizes that it's not about the hardware, it's about the software. A soldier who is leveraging his intellectual capabilities even more than his military hardware. The soldier intellectual. And I don't mean intellectual in the academic mold of things, but I mean intellectual in terms of deploying your mind. Simply put, a soldier who is a thought leader. A soldier like Jerry Rawlings, a soldier like Thomas Sankara, definitely. And in this case, a soldier like Ibrahim Traoré, that's the kind of soldier that he was, that he still is. Because during this period that is in the army, he's also using his mind a lot. He's providing thought leadership. He's going to the front line to fight as part of the United Nations peacekeeping mission. He is facing off with the jihadist terrorists who are tearing apart his country. He's facing off with them. He's only in his late 20s, in his early 30s. He is not an elite soldier who is working on connections with those who are higher ranking with him so that he can get ahead and enrich himself. He's not looking out for his own interests, but he's looking out for the interests of his country. A soldier intellectual, deploying his mind for a better country. And when Ibrahim Traoré was part of this UN peacekeeping mission, he was also exposed to the frailties of imperialism and the United Nations system. He was also experiencing the frailties of the imperialists who were funding this, and realizing that if things were to change in Burkina Faso, it was going to take the Burkinabè people themselves to take matters into their own hands. This is the same Ibrahim Traoré who had to go into battle with less weaponry, insufficient weaponry, sometimes on a hungry stomach, because Blaise Compaoré's government and later on Roch Kaboré's government were not prioritizing the welfare of the army in the same way they were not prioritizing the welfare of the Burkinabè people, especially the lower-ranking army soldiers. He had experienced this injustice from his own country, from his own bosses. He experienced the shortcomings of the UN mission right there in the field. And as he watched all these things, the mind that he had been nurturing all this time, a mind that was fueled by a resilient spirit, a courageous spirit, was doing a lot of calculations. He was increasingly realizing that things in his country were still not changing, despite a new president, Roch Kaboré, taking over, elected by the people.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Roch Marc Christian Kaboré, and to invite him to address the Assembly. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Monsieur le Président.
Nothing was changing. He was seeing the same old corruption. Even as he risked his life fighting the jihadists, seeking for peace in neighboring countries, the president, the army generals were not doing the same. They were not serving the Burkinabè people, but they were serving their own interests. And this was driving him mad. Now, in the last segment of this episode, I will tell you what finally snapped within Ibrahim Traoré, the ordinary person, Ibrahim Traoré, the normal, ordinary soldier, captain. What is it that finally snapped within him and made him take a big leap? A leap that could have gone either way. I'll tell you that in this final segment as we conclude. My beloved fellow Africans, this is what snapped in Ibrahim Traoré. You see, in January 2022, his fellow soldier led a coup d'etat that toppled then President Marc Christian Kaboré. And Traoré expected that finally my beloved country, the one that I have dreamt of all this time, is going to see a new dawn, is going to see a new day. That's what he thought. Because this is a fellow soldier, hopefully he means well. That's what he thought. And he watched very, very closely. Something about Ibrahim Traoré is that he is very perceptive, and before he takes action, he is watching very closely. If you want to have a sense of his thinking, if you have ever watched a leopard hunt, you will understand that because it's not as fast as a cheetah, because it's not as strong as a lion, it watches very closely. It knows that its biggest strength, in one word, is stealth. Stealth. And stealth is all about watching very closely, being very strategic. That's what it's about. Being very strategic and executing that strategy in the right amount of time, in the right way. So Traoré watched Damiba, the guy who had toppled the president. He began asking himself, finally, are we going to have a Burkina Faso where the poor are not treated like they do not belong, like they are not part of the country, where the rich are not constantly lording it over the people? Are we going to have that Burkina Faso? Is the army going to be treated with decency and respect? Is it going to be given sufficient weaponry and tools that it needs to defeat the enemy? Are the people going to be given sufficient tools that they need to defeat the enemy of poverty? So Traoré observed February, March. He celebrated his birthday on March 14th. He turned 34. But he told his friends that there isn't much to celebrate about. Let us give the head of state the benefit of doubt. After all, he only took over in a coup d'etat 2 months ago. So he waited April, May. He realized that the government, led by a soldier like him, was still sending soldiers to fight the jihadists with insufficient weaponry. That some of these soldiers were still going to battle on a hungry stomach because there were insufficient rations for the army. And his blood was boiling. Every time he talked to his friends, to his people from the village, he realized that the poor still were not being taken care of. He looked long and hard for government policies that at least were seeking to address the poverty in the country. Didn't see any at all. July, August. Traoré started realizing that it was just going to be the same old. That this was just a corrupt ruling elite in uniform, but corrupt nonetheless. Now, that mind that had made him to study geology in university so that he could understand more of his country's mineral resources and what could be done, that spirit that fueled his venture into Marxism while at university, that same mind and that same spirit that made him conclude he needed to join the army to defend his country from the front lines, to be there for his country, to understand more about what needs to be done to transform his country. The fusion of that mind and that spirit, as August drew to a close, 34-year-old Ibrahim Traoré decided that it was now or never. Those final 2 weeks in the month of September, before he took the great leap, before he provided leadership within the army, were some of the most intense and consequential of his life. And we will get into those final 2 weeks of September. We will get into those 2 weeks of September 2022 in the next episode, so that we can further grasp the ordinary Ibrahim Traoré, who then became an extraordinary leader, and how that should inform Africa's electorate today, so that each of Africa's 54 countries can be extraordinary, so that the entire Africa can transform, so that Africans can realize the African dream that belongs to them. Remember, the Pan-African sun is rising. There is no one in this world and no force on this earth that can stop the Pan-African sun from rising.